Yeah, okay, I'm getting a quick look here at this light to see if I'm going to leave it right here. Maybe move the phone camera here. It's kind of bright right here with the projector. With what you see in the background is um, it's identified as a 3D. It's to me it's really just a two-dimensional surface, but yeah. So it looks like that as a fractal uh, fractal animation. Yeah. So yeah, that's the Splendor of Colors Kaleidoscope. Um, 3D. I think it's more of a 2D, but doesn't really show the actual depth more than expansion and contraction is really all it looks like. But it's like really cool in that way. But it's yeah, that is a kaleidoscope fractal animation, yeah, and graphics, yeah. So anyway, yes, I'm getting quick on here to see if that projector is going to be too bright or whatever the case is. So I'm going to get maybe a few more seconds just to see what it's going to look like as far as sequencing goes with the lighting to see if it's going to need a little bit of adjustment or whatever. But yeah. So anyway, I was going to say something real quick about the thing about the alphanumerics and linguistics in a way of like some it seems to be like I've mentioned before, it's kind of like the humor kind of leads to like quite a bit. Normally involving the relation between architecture and platform and how the equator and operator and all that distinguish the difference, what a degree level seems to be as compared to maybe what would be considered a North American Free Trade Act in the way of like non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization of the non-degree thing, or what that means in placement as far as ultimately even getting to the part of like a non-taxable, whether if non-taxable income is really only representative of a categorization of annuity as compared to maybe what would be considered I mean, if it's going to be the thought of like prepaid um, postage in a way of already paid for practical application of an intended use as a projected estimate is really what the deal is about. Whether if non-taxable income is only representing an annuity based upon a categorization of what seems to be almost similarities of like the U.S. patent um, and copyright and trademark in a way of like I had mentioned some information that was like in my mind something of the writ of habeas corpus and um, why litigation not necessarily de facto or what that is even to a Texas guaranteed student loan of Pell Grants. Yet likewise I mean if it's a guaranteed student loan, I mean would it be considered a guaranteed loan maybe only geographically attaching whether if a degree level or North American Free Trade Act would only represent still continually a method of banking, um, or maybe some idea of like some strategic, effective, non-degreed crap about like not knowing the difference of what it means to be in a bank to begin with, um, or maybe just geographically identifying what money is as maybe beyond the categorization of money, and or if that would actually present a international purchasing way of geographically or identifying, the categorization of money as compared to the degree level of like, circuit and currency and electronic power over, every money, like on the entire planet, right? In that way of like, multinational banking systems. Yeah. So in any case, so like, I mean, if it's ultimately getting to the thought of like a news anchor or, what that is in import and export or like maritime law, or if it's just like maybe the thought of a demanded standard of like a internet protocol of a local area network is ultimately getting to whether some monetary domestic gross national product is the only thought of like having the right to assemble and the freedom of the press in a way of what aggregates might only suggest of like having the right to assemble the freedom of speech and freedom of press, and what aggregates might only suggest maybe is when itemizing, beyond taxation, getting into the expenditures beyond the executive classroom, going to a circuit, or what that really is in human capital and human investment. But I think I'm going to go ahead and just go with this sliding right here anyway, since I'm getting into it. I was thinking about the three pool tables, being the pockets, the six pockets on a pool table, and three pool tables, and the thought of like, six pockets on each being, of three pool tables being 18, and what that is to, the felt, or the color code of like the pastel green, identified in world history, and also likewise in addition pastel green being the province, Also, one of the night colors of night vision, and ultimately get into the Abraham Lincoln thing about the only president studied in the dark, and all that stuff about why one pronoun cannot be used, why one pronoun, four types of pronouns cannot be used as a subject, It's almost like a quadrant of the rectangle of the Lincoln photo. But likewise, it seemed to be like the deal about the thing about the word pocket itself, and ultimately, in alphanumerics, leading to the alphanumerics of 87. The reason being, in my mind, seemingly it's getting to be the issue between like the ERISA statute and the IRA with a remainder of the SE and the Apple iPhone SE thing about the C in the vision in the way of even the word pocket, and it's ultimately getting to the absentee thing about the word pocket, ultimately getting to the alphanumerics of 87, being the truth and the miracle God that way of 12, yet at the same time of the US $1, but knew it. See Holy Miracle, the thing about my thing about the telepathic birth, the symbolic representation of biblical scripture in a way of like the spirit of adoption, and the PTIS being 64, ACTP :// American Israel, and all that stuff. And I don't really like saying music minus A because I think there's more to it than just saying the minus thing, or if that's like the thought of like what only programming means on K television, and it seems to be the only two words that really don't define anything other than maybe some scattered uh, what seems to be like a alphanumeric formula in a way of like simplicity of like a KWD over something cubed. But in any case, it seemed to be ultimately getting to like W and K and W television, and what the cubed is to as a denominator. I don't even know if it really even represents a common or a denominator really at all, other than maybe what my thoughts would be maybe of an equator and operator of a degreed or non-degreed issue of the word relation between reputable standards and consensual participation, and what that is to, whether if that is the degree level likewise of embedding encryption that way, it seems to be the big four of, what the word, and it's really the only word that I have noticed being, the thing about, between the architecture and the platform that way. And in any case, so like, I was thinking about that because of, the word pocket on pool table, and each pool table having six pockets, and ultimately it gets to like a my thought of like a Mercedes Benz thing, and the delta portion away of the 3 point of a triangle, as well as the pi squared, and all that stuff getting to the 6 point star, and beyond the exponents being normally a pi squared, it's already identified normally of addition. Very rarely is an exponent of pi squared in exponential placement ever using subtraction. Truthfully, I mean, I don't think, even representing what would be normally an additional factor as a variable or identified like it is in pi r squared, but the two is in a placement like where a degree would normally, be as an exponent, as a variable is already identified that way. But yeah, so like in like the exponential quotients of like, um, powers of multiplication in placement, the thing about the um, degree level of reputable standards, obviously, beyond, the executive classroom, and the thing about the, if the words even really even illuminate, it would only maybe present maybe, the difference between ergonomic maybe as compared to maybe the thought of I don't want to say ad lib, or something about the generations of like, every cloud has a silver lining, or what that is to, aeronautics and affirmative action that way of like pilots, and National Aeronautic Space Administration in a way of what it means in that way. But yeah, so anyway, normally the word is affirmative in a way of accuracy that way, or what that symbol is ultimately getting to, the nuit comptus minus the one word of the Book of Thessalonians, re-entering heaven thing about the, re-entering the atmosphere at the speed of light. Yeah. So in any case, yeah, so like I was thinking about that because um, the thought about the six boxes in a pool table, also likewise representing, some idea of whether it's a pastel or, a color, the book jurisprudence with the black back on it, and the actual colors of this bright thing about the pastel green and the green of, the same color, the book jurisprudence, and likewise, it having a black back is really the thing about it. Um, Yeah, so that's really what the deal is about it. Is the green, the jurisprudence with the black back on it. I mean, it's the thing about it, okay? In any case, yeah, so like and if all that means is Abraham Lincoln and like night vision, The thing of it is that ultimately, while I was thinking about the six pool tables, it seems like somewhere in my mind that the root of habeas corpus seems to be something that would be, whether or not if it's just a presidential debate representative of like you know um, the thought of why litigation at a corporate level um, is normally at a corporate level, given the impression that in my thought that the United States Supreme Court it doesn't necessarily seem to be something that would represent maybe anything other than litigation as compared to annuity, not necessarily settlement in a way of what only non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization only means to a non-degree experience in the circuit, or why one pronoun of the four types of pronouns can't be used as a subject. And it's a little bit of humor about the thought of what a tree is in landscaping, um, as compared to like when a high-rise building, and I don't know if it's really true of all high rises, but everything I've ever known of like high-rise buildings being built and completed, normally a tree would be put on top of it. Not that it really has to represent anything of like holiday or Christmas or religion. Maybe not limited to and including the thought of like a what that is to an RCA mascot of the Radio Corporation of America, or the alphanumerics of 22. But anyway, it's kind of like it gets to that the six pockets, and my thought of like Mercedes-Benz and 3 point, and it seems to be the deal about the U.S. patents, copyrights, and trademarks in a way of like three pool tables. And what six pockets times multiplied by three is like 18 holes and pockets, right? Well, anyway, so it's like the thing of the word pocket. Okay, it ultimately gets to the alphanumerics of 78 and escrow, hard god. Um, the alphanumerics of 78 and like Robert. It seems to be the thing about the somewhere in my mind the secrets of the temple, how the Federal Reserve runs the country. Something about in my mind a hard god in a way, because as a matter of fact, as, not that it's really anything, not that it has to be cardiology, but you know, um, I'm not going to go that direction right now and put a lot of time and think about that right now. But the thing with this is that ultimately, based upon experience, the thing about a hard guide and Robert was like my motivation, and looking, and it's like I was like just getting into like alphanumerics, not even linguistics yet. Predominantly, like the alphanumerics in like June of 1992. Okay, but anyway, like I mean, probably a good solid 5, maybe 6 or 7 years. I guess around 5 years, I was like looking at uh, the word and the study of language in a way of like the word linguistics, that way, and combined with alphanumerics and linguistics. I mean, it really goes far beyond like any normal, any degree level, really, truthfully, of like any English class on a major university. As far as I know, that it seems to be that alphanumerics apply to like linguistics. Um, I haven't ever heard of like any curriculum or degree plan on any major university anywhere really identifying the two in any kind of way of combination of like the study of language, or what that is, and the real thing about it. But anyway, yeah. So like I mean, it's almost like in my mind like something that is of a personal interest, and normally an experience that will probably motivate beyond any kind of norm that will ultimately result in probably decades about it, right? But anyway, so like I was thinking about that about the pool table, and yeah, I was thinking about the Paul Newman, the Color of Money, and when I actually realized the title of the movie with Paul Newman about him being a pool player and a pool cue, has ultimately led in my mind some connectivity about the cubic foot and what that is, and um, as far as like many factors involving whether the cue or the cubic foot, and some other practical application that would suggest architecture and platform, really computer programming and language, just based on that itself, but yet of pronunciation in the way of design. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, so like the cubic foot is something in my mind of color code of like the color of money, and money being 72 and brown, and even the barbecue sauce thing about Paul Newman, not limited to an A1 steak sauce, and all that stuff about proper English numerical composition, and the solid state thing beyond the thought of what that is to well balance, and the halo venue, the almighty toilet, right, and beyond the color code of all that white stuff, and into the thought of the high silver and all that. But anyway, it's kind of like just the thing about the six pockets on a pool table, and three pool tables. Pool tables being like 107 in military and in quantum and all that stuff. And the thing about it is that it seems to be something in my mind that seems to be a practical application, even of a Texas Guaranteed student loan. It seems to me like the three practical principle of the U.S. patent, copyright, and trademark. Yet the thing that seemed to be in my mind of a writ of habeas corpus, or maybe what the demanded requirements or the minimum requirements that would maybe suggest what a guaranteed student loan is. If it's ultimately getting to, just programming on television, and ultimately what it means as compared to civil, um, or what litigation might only suggest as settlement based upon uh, uh, a neglect, or some thought of maybe a infringement, or a settlement based upon whether or not, if it's only the thought of supplemental, using the word settlement by comparison, something of pi r squared as compared to exponential quotients of powers of multiplication as compared to like pi r squared being only of addition of what would give the similarities of practical application of uh, virtually the thought of like even Ulysses S. Grant in the way of 50-50, and ultimately using if you want to call it a percentage or grade scale of 100, or what that is to a century in the way, or 100 in the way of a quarter, the way it's all manufactured seem to be like ultimately gets to, the grade of like a heart god in a hospital, and manufactures that way. But anyway, I was thinking about the word pocket, and the C thing and the absentee voting, and really pocket without the C, and the absentee voting thing with two T's instead of one. It'd be like the alphanumerics of 87, and the truth and miracle God that way, and quite a bit more. Ultimately, getting to even the predominant number of like football quarterbacks, and being number 12, and ultimately getting to my thought of like the backside of the U.S. $1 bill, the new accomplished minus a one word transfiguration, and Book of Thessalonians in the King James Version Bible about re-entering heaven, okay, and the alphanumerics of 192, and years later, I was like going through quite a bit. And as far as I know, the alphanumerics of 192 involving amplification or American Amplified. It is like a American Amplified Living Bible thing. And if it's ultimately getting to what a fixture in real estate is about American Amplified in a way of communications, or if it's really only the thought of like hi-fi stereo in the form of like a home theater. Because as far as I know, like the hi-fi stereo system didn't have any information, as far as I know. It's not that I even know, really. It may have been exactly that and not even identified, truthfully so. But in any case, like on a home theater, as far as like the American Amplified Living Bible thing, or what a fixture is in real estate, as far as like living quarters, it seems to be like now, it seems to be the significance of what a neighborhood is, the yays or nays of like Washington, D.C., or what a commercial venue of living quarters is, as compared to, not a question of whether or not if a neighborhood is really, some huge secret that, some, thought and motivations like, whether or not a political science is like, designated what family law only means based upon, distribution of information, and what availability only means in that way. Or maybe the manufactured thought of like uh, you know, it would have to be more than a miracle to even know, or even, be able to, put it all together, and have some like comprehendibly, phenomenally like great explanation, that, would be at a degree level that would be maybe the thought of like, who you're trying to kid at this point, And in any case, so like it gets to ultimately whether or not, if a commercial venue, it would only represent maybe what advertisement is as a television, as a fixture in real estate, or the thought of you know if a fixture is ultimately getting to whether or not of medical power of attorney, using fixture in real estate, and what that is, so it seems to be the homeowners association being the acronym of the HOA, uh, GMAC, General Motors Accepted Corporation, or the IEEE, being the International Electronic Engineering, and the big other thing about it being like from 24 to 39. And it gets all that wide earp stuff and exclusionary rule provision that seems to be, of sovereign immunities, governmental amnesties, and executive powers. And somewhere between Wyatt Earp and John Wayne, the red habeas corpus and all that true grit stuff and what Hopstang is, even J. Edgar Hoover and that amphibious stuff about, even the thought of like maybe even the tribe of Levi in the way of like levitation, or what annotated is to the Tate thing and the levitate, and even the book of Leviticus. I mean, for real, but it seems to be whether or not if the thought of the six holes on each pool table representative like 18 pockets. But anyway, back to the word pocket, it seemed to be like ultimately it gets to the Apple iPhone SE and what that is between the recent statute and the IRA and the color code, like Air Force One, President of the United States, and the different versions of like the color code of the Air Force One itself. Ultimately, the colors of the 1040 EZ. Ultimately, and it hadn't really been limited to ultimately getting to the IRA thing about the the acronym itself, and the thought of whether it's going to be a degree level or the separation between church and state using an acronym that way, or what going through the circuit is as compared to knowing or not knowing whether it's degreed or non-degreed or not. What that means as compared to like participating in the circuit that way. And what all that is ultimately in my mind getting to like Geneva, Switzerland, it's ultimately getting to the thought of the Bureau of Printing and Engraving, what the hood ornament of a rectangle is of a vertical as compared to a 9 degree as a horizontal, or what would be considered a flat plane uh, of two-dimensional. I mean, it's not that it has to be two-dimensional, but normally, the thought of like um, paper made, I mean, it's automatic, or the US dollar itself, it's like a two-plane surface front and back. And normally it would normally be identified as that anyway. But the thing of it is about when isometrics is involved, it seems to be, my thing about what I call 2D ISO 3D, two-dimensional isometric of three-dimensional of actual participation that identifies something a little bit more beyond the perception of like just knowing, with a more practical, broader sense of practical application beyond its intended use, normally identified in blueprints and schematics of isometrics representing three-dimensional of obviously, projected estimate, normally automatically in progress, normally when blueprints are involved anyway, of actual participation beyond, viewing what is normally on paper or PDF file in a way of electronics that way, representing, what it is in reality. But, yeah, so, I mean, if that's really the thought of a distinguishable difference of why one pronoun cannot be used as a subject is maybe the only thought of a method of banking as a provided of what available information is in an everyday way as standard of non-degreed, non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization. I'm sure that many people in virtually so very many neighborhoods probably don't even say themselves in a bank, suggesting that isometrics or actual participation is anything other than on paper. I mean, even if it even qualifies for maybe the imagination of like, hey man, are you sure it's even a reality in family law? And just, signing what would be considered an endorsed check or an employment check, or, even a thought of like an adjustment of an insurance claim, or whatever the case may be. Yet, even with a direct deposit in any checking account, it still presents the issue of whether or not if it's going to be a continual issue, like the history of a mailbox, or a rural route, or routing, or what that is to a route or a route, and what that is to in networking that way of a local area network, and what internet protocol seems to be only involved with the front lines of the beachfront of international financial management and maritime law that way, or what the immigration customs enforcement really means to the Bureau of Vital Statistics, or what's going on with the programming in television, K television. I mean, is it ultimately getting to whether or not if a fixture in real estate is only being used, whether medical power would only suggest only the thought of what the uh, uh, um, medical power of attorney using fixture in real estate, such as maybe a television as a professional witness, or what commerce dictates what's on or offshore in that way. I mean, if it's ultimately getting to the RF and the redundant frequency, of what that means to 8 ohms. Not limited to, but yeah, I mean, ultimately it gets to the RF and the redundant frequency, or the FR, and what the EE really is in the word free in 34, representing that US $1 in a way. Um, I mean, it seemed to be like the isometrics, ultimately getting to what I'm really referring to of like a three pool tables, pool tables being the Alpha 107. I live on, County Road 107, but it's actually, Actually, 3611 Mona Street, Pearland, Texas, 77584. The thing with this is that, okay, hi, my name is Wade. I'm a drummer, singer, whatever the case may be. Okay, but in any case, yeah, so like there's more to it, and it seems to be like whether or not if the royalties is really the issue of like duration of, what normal people do with like compact discs is practice whatever it is that has been provided as available as a preference as a standard. And me being a drummer, that's obviously the thing about it is kind of like hey, but I like I haven't like to live to like get into my original music, and sometimes I wonder if we internationally provided like an easement for the entire situation of what duration of like royalties means in that way. And I'm kind of like we're really wondering that for real. But in any case, yeah, so like in any case, yeah, so like it's been like an ongoing deal about in my mind, what we international is, or what the thought of like the Roosevelt New Deal Act is, or the thought of like, and maybe even the thought of like a Sarbanes and Oxley financial instruments and SOX compliance, and what SOX compliance really is or is not, or maybe what a secret alley is to like Vantage, the alphanumerics of 70, Vantage low 30, or the thought of like a secret de facto, or what 30 is to, the thought of maybe even Babylon, right? Um, or, the map, baby Bible, and, all that gets into the map, and um, the MSN, the map, the PAM, the PAN, the Japan thing about it, and what that is, and Pearland being alphanumerics of 71, and my thought of like getting into this. I think there's only two that I really remember. At the time, I didn't even recognize anything significant that way. I was just looking at it, and that was like one of my thoughts. It kind of looks like Japanese, as far as the structure and quantum with that different by design E. I mean, it didn't go beyond that. I mean, I wasn't even involved with like alphanumerics or any kind of way, but that's what my thoughts were at the time. Just looking at some of the stuff about the different by design, because it seemed to be that in coordination with the front page, Houston Chronicle front page news at the time back in the 80s, so identified, world news, national news, and local news that, one of the bigger shipments of like the century is like a Chevrolet Geo Prism and Hyundai Excel in the port of Houston, okay? And during that time, it wasn't on the same day, the same. Um, I don't even think it was the same week, but it's like a front page news about the Geo Prism and the Hyundai Excel, and ultimately it seemed to be like the different by design E that's in the actual formula and the structure and computation of like quantum, and it's like involving attenuation, beyond the thought of like measuring cycles per second, oscillation, getting into the waveform of attenuation and processing speed and signal processing, and all the stuff about parameters and what that is, and customizing waveform and special effects that way. And I'm sure it's really not limited to audio production, but the word attenuation predominantly, like in my thought, based upon what I've been involved with, and just as a drummer, just really just listening and practicing what I've used, really my entire life as far as being a drummer, really beginning really at the age of 14, my first, 5-piece drum set, really. All that stuff about bongos and snare drums, and before all that, well, sure, that's significant, but the thing with it is that when I really, decided to get, serious, I mean, I started out with a 5-piece drum set, and really I would have started out automatically with like, a 180-degree, double bass, but the thing with it is that there was a lot, considerable amount of factors involved that way. But anyway, like what I have now is like a Pearl Vision drum set, and it's like a full 180, and there's like an economic factor presenting the issue, like again, okay, so like anyway, so like um, it's like a normally, I mean, it's like a 15 drum set itself, including rototoms and like a octobon. I'm actually trying to get the rocket, the Pearl rocket toms, and the transparent ruby red thing to match my like Strutter Red drum set, Pearl Vision drum set. But anyway, yeah, so like anyway, yeah, so like I've been I actually tried to do that, but anyway, it's kind of like it went through a lot of stuff because of the COVID ID-19 thing, and there's some others available, but I might go ahead and get some until the Pearl Vision, um, the Pearl rock toms are available. Like again, okay, in a transparent ruby red to match my drum set. I'm thinking about actually getting a blue like the Strata Red. I'm not even sure if the Pearl Vision with the blue is considered a Strata or not, although it is blue with the same design, but it's with the blue and the black. What a Strata Red is to the Pearl Vision drum set with the blue and the same thing except blue that way. Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's even called Strata Blue. I'm not sure at all, but yeah, the similarity of really looking quite a bit about it, except with the blue about it. But anyway, I might go ahead and do that as soon as I can. But anyway, um, I thought about the pool tables and the pocket being the thing on like the Apple iPhone SE, or that one eye on the back side, or the US $1, or that pronunciation of C in the word pocket. Okay, ultimately getting to the alphanumerics of 67, with the absentee voting thing about it, seems to be the alphanumerics of 87. And the thing about the numerical value of the number 12, likewise the actual spelling of the word 12 being 87, and all that connectivity between football and baseball, and 9-degree right angle, and the spiral, and the perpendicular spiral, and certain factors that ultimately get to the marginal spread of the tennis court. And my thought of like a quadrant of like the Abraham Lincoln night vision, and what that is to the vertical rectangle of the hood ornament, and what that is to a tennis court that way. Um, Whether or not, if it's just two players identified as the singles, or four players identified as doubles. I mean, the rectangle, in my mind represents the thought of like Abraham Lincoln night vision that way, and why one pronoun cannot be used as a subject, and really, all that stuff about it, like who you trying to kid? Are you sure? Why one pronoun cannot be used as a subject? You kidding me? Yeah. So anyway, yeah, like the thing about it is, it seemed to be like whether or not that the Mercedes Benz, um, and the 3 point, and my thought about the pool table being, 3 pool tables being 18 hole, and what that is to an 18-hole golf course that way, and the word pocket, it seems to be like it's ultimately getting to, once again, the Pentagon Reserve Reverse, or the intelligence option, the telepathic phase. And my thought about the escrow ultimately getting from the alphanumerics of 87 being the truth and the miracle God, and the exact opposite being 78. That way with the word pocket, and it seems to be ultimately getting to the hard God issue. And one biblical scripture is not even the concordance about, the word of God is hidden in the heart thing. And really what that is, involving ESCO, inadvertently, it seems to me that, studying as a paralegal, very rarely did I actually look for any, or even present it as classroom academic. Um, as far as ESCO, normally in my mind, earlier, but years before I even, like, studied to be a paralegal that way, completing 9 courses on my 10th course, being real estate, I kind of like did my thing with the Art Institute, like audio production, television production, music video. But anyway, yeah. So like, anyway, that's where it was at right there. Is when I made the transition between there. It's like, hey, so like I did that. But anyway, it seemed to be like ultimately the similarities of a guaranteed student loan with forbearance is presenting the issue of like it's not penalty, yet it presents the issue whether it's actually meeting the requirements of like a writ of habeas corpus as compared to litigation, not necessarily being de facto. That presents the issue of whether or not, if that's some like secret idea of like what settlement would only mean. I mean, if the litigation is really even the real issue, or the thought of litigation would only maybe present maybe the issue of maybe only what North American Free Trade Act means to a degree or non-degree level of non-transferable, non-transferable, non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization that way, that would only present maybe a 9-degree thought of like what employment only means in placement and description, or what participation only suggests of, the classified ads. Or, the thought of like, whether or not that a degree level of method of banking would only suggest maybe what a circuit is, even like really even getting to like the circuit, right? Um, yeah, or what that is in, monetary domestic gross national product, and like, aggregates that way, or what that is, to the constitutional law, like having the right to assemble, or what the freedom of speech and freedom of press ultimately means. So, why the Fifth Amendment is not, a nonprofit organization. Some thought of like, really, I mean, is that the thought of like the silence is representative of like, a professional witness, or don't be fooled by, the thought of like some, spiritual gifted telepathic communication representative of something close to silence, right? Yeah, so anyway, yeah, so, all that, silence sometimes, hey, that's really nice of you, okay? Yeah, sure it is. So anyway, yeah, so like, I mean, if that's some thought of like some telepathic spiritual gifted communication, anyway, it ultimately gets to, the thought about, well, why wouldn't it be, right? Because sometimes even talking, knowing what to talk about, sometimes it seems to be, the real deal, about alphanumerics and linguistics, and ultimately through, like years of studying, it's ultimately, it's ultimately got into, the worldwide thing about the playing horizons of like importing and exporting, or, um, multinational, banking systems in a way, like the circuit currency, and communication over, the categorization itself of the thought of what international law, like having fair use, would only mean to an intellectual easement, or, whether or not if non-agreed issues of non-negotiable, non-transferable itemization is only the thought of, just what maybe the thought of like a circuit might only mean, not being the thought of it like an unemployment. Um, Factor as compared to a classified ad, or going from one place to the other, or finding some thought of idea of what staying would really mean. But I mean, the thing with this is that ultimately it's ultimately getting whether there's any thought of confrontation or a naivety, and everything's like really cool and going good, kind of like blind to the fact of being comfortably satisfied, and maybe ignorantly not experience something that might maybe present the issue, like hey, it's time to wake up and see what's really going on, kind of thing, But so ultimately, it's got to the thought of like the pool table with the six pocket being the thing about in my mind somehow, the Mercedes Benz thing, the 3 point, or the three intersecting axes of Audi, and the big O, the audio thing, or what that is in attenuation and processing speed, and what the axis is. The axis is to a 9 degree, and it seemed to be like really the thought of like the three intersecting axes of Audi. And it seems to be like the architecture of like the thing about the um, what the architecture means to maybe a structure, or the high O silver factor of like one of the um, I don't know if I'd call it a venue or maybe just a structure. I'm not sure what to call the stainless steel. I mean, totally about the high O silver thing, and where the oldest governmental computer mainframe is called the Whopper. Um, it ultimately gets to the thought of like really um, what the U.S. dollar is to in God we trust, a representative of what religion. I mean, if it just has to be category, or all religions, or a multinational banking systems using the U.S. dollar in that way as an intellectual easement, or what that has already thought, whether if it's like such a great secret, even knowing would be maybe the thought of like, are you kidding me? It seems to me like now it's getting to the Diners Club, and what the Diners Club obviously seems to be of in my mind, a distinguishable factor like symbolic representation, representing the Japanese structure of quantum, of computation and formula that way, of the the blue circle with the vertical line in the center of it, and what a 9 degree, and it's like Brazoria here in Parallax Texas. I mean, it's like 90, okay, and all that pi r square, the the 9 degree right angle. I mean, the right angle thing is really the distinguishable difference between what adjacent is to um, um, the 90 degree right angle as compared to something that would be considered anything not perfectly, a 90 degree right angle. Anything other than a 90 degree right angle would be, the word adjacent that way. That would present maybe anything other. I mean, if it's tolerance in a way, um, well, there it is. Yeah. So anyway, in any case, yeah. So like I was thinking about that because I was wanting to include that because it's already going on 38 minutes and like 28 seconds right now. But I wanted to include that real quick while I was thinking about the thought of the pocket, and how Apple iPhone SE seems to be like the C thing about the language, and the yes, and the C is likewise in this and in English of the vision thing, um, and quite a bit about the Jose, can you see by the dawn's early light thing, and what that is to measuring density in nano units of like luminance, um, of night vision to pastel green and pastel red that way, of normally identified on world news, national, local news as a military of night vision with the two colors. Anyway, yeah, so like it's already like going on 39 minutes and like 13 seconds right now. So anyway, I just wanted to include that. If there's any more, I'll include it later. Okay, there it is. Yeah.